So when you're an owner and you find yourself preparing for an emergency and you're in the Southern California area, what do you do? I'm Steve Rosenberg with Mynd Property Management. Today I'm joined with Kyle Stevens, who is our portfolio manager for the Southern California region for Mynd. Kyle, you're in the middle, you've got an emergency coming, a pandemic or something that is about to happen. How do you prepare, or do you suggest the landlords prepare for such an event?
Hey, Steve. Well, thank you for having me here today. I definitely wanted to give a little bit of information here to answer your question. So I think from a landlord perspective, you definitely need to understand the definition of what an emergency is and what classifies it as an emergency. That being said, there's also various types of emergencies that you should be prepared for. So from a maintenance standpoint, basically anything that compromises the structural integrity of your house is what I would consider a maintenance emergency, whether that be water is a big one for sure. You need to be able to, identify where all of your water shutoff valves are. The valve for the home itself, the valve for the property itself, the irrigation line valve. There's a bunch of different locations that you need to be aware of as a landlord in order to protect yourself and know where those valves are. That being said, there's also, like a gas valve and several other, components that could damage that integrity of your house. So it's important to be aware of where those are as well. That being said, if you classify an emergency that is more related to a health pandemic, such as COVID-19, you want to be sure that you follow the CDC guidelines. You want to be sure that you have contact information for the CDC or have some sort of person you can reach out to for information. You also want to know where the closest hospitals are around your location, whether you own a property in another state or here in San Diego. You want to be sure you're familiar with the area and where the closest hospitals are and also have their information on hand. In addition to hospitals, it's important to have your insurance information. You want to be sure you have that scanned and saved as readily accessible for you in your files. You also want to have an emergency contact for that representative. And basically, you need to have a full understanding as to what the emergency is, what classifies it as an emergency, and basically how to best resolve it.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's some wise advice. And, again, remember that you've got a business as an owner, but you also have a resident that's emotions, and the resident has their belongings and their life in this property. So communicating what will happen. Now, normally California, you get earthquakes. You don't necessarily get, thunder. You don't get, hurricanes coming through, but sometimes from the Gulf, you'll get some weather, some bad weather coming through. But in general, that's why people live in Southern California, is they love the weather. So you don't really necessarily know when an earthquake is going to come. But again, a pandemic such as the coronavirus or other things, this is why you want to be able to be prepared. And again, if there is an earthquake, you want to make sure the resident knows how to shut the gas line off, how to shut the water lines off. That's why this is so important when you're dealing with a situation like an earthquake or something. You want to be prepared. You may not be able to get back into the house, and you may not be able to find your contact information for the resident or for insurance information. It may be your house that's damaged and all of your belongings, and you can't get information. So that's why saving it to the cloud or something like that to where you can get to it anywhere, I think is very, very important and key. And again, making sure, CDC, poison control, hospitals, having those numbers in, maybe even having them on the refrigerator of your house may be a good idea. These are just some things that are good practices to have, because in the heat of battle, in the heat of everything, you may not be able to get to this information. Also, if you have a multifamily property, where all the exits are so that the residents can exit the property, to know how to safely egress out of the complex in a safe manner. And where are the fire extinguishers? Make sure those are up to date and charged. And a lot of that may be a continual process of making sure the property is up to date, safe, and secure. But again, these are just preemptive things that you want to do, because in the middle of an emergency, that is not the time to start explaining where things are, because people are not normally thinking clearly and calmly, and you don't want to have to be the one to explain that. Is there anything else that you could think of, Kyle, that people should know of?
Actually, yes. Right when you said fire extinguisher, I thought of one other item. It's definitely important to know where your smoke detectors and carbon detectors are within a house. And it's also important to know the manufacturer date of those items, because there is a California code, a 10-year code, that those detectors must fall in line with. So if those aren't up to code and you have a fire inside of your house and they malfunction, that ultimately falls on you, and your responsibility to ensure those are functioning and up to code, like I was saying. So I would say smoke and carbon detectors are another big one that are often overlooked.
Absolutely. And that's a very, very good point, because again, in an emergency, you want to make sure if something's going wrong with the property and there's, some type of toxin being emitted into the unit, you've got to make sure that you're protected and the safety and security of the resident is protected as well. And that's great information. So I think that pretty much sums it up of how to prepare for an emergency. We'll talk in other videos about other ways to deal with emergencies as they're going on. So Kyle, thank you so much. For those of you watching, if you'd like to know more information, you can go to our website, mynd.co. There you can go into the Knowledge Center and you'll find a lot of information that will help you, help your residents, and again, get you on the educational path so that should something happen, you are educated prior to the event and not trying to understand and untangle this yarn of string as it's evolving and happening. So on behalf of Kyle, myself, and Mynd Property Management, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you'd like to keep the conversation going, join our Facebook group.